All right, well, good morning, Kai. Thank you everyone for attending my talk. Today I'll be talking about my research, exploring co-design with breastfeeding mothers. Designing mobile applications for mothers can be challenging. Creating spaces to foster design is even more so. So today I'll be talking about the development of the Milk Matters mobile application, a tool developed to motivate women to donate their surplus breast milk to a local milk bank. I'll also be discussing the importance of using different approaches when working with these mothers to understand them. Mothers interact with computers in very different ways, and although there are many existing applications and platforms designed for mothers, there is actually very little research on how to design for mothers. Developing a successful intervention for mothers requires intimate knowledge on their behaviors, feelings, and the issues that they may face. Even more so if you want to ensure the sustained use of the artifact. In this research, we've used a co-design approach to acquire this knowledge, as we believe it gave us the best way on how to get insight on how mothers of small children interact with computers, but also on how to collaboratively work with mothers in the formulation and solution of a problem. In this research, we're also working with mothers who are milk donors, and by addressing this population, we're doing research on how to do design for mothers who are milk donors, additionally to researching how to do research for mothers. Presently, there's very little research on milk donation, and we think co-design was a good approach to understand what motivates mothers to first become and continue donating their breast milk, and whether ICTs may contribute to the increased or sustained donation. As mentioned, we used co-design as our approach, as we believe it fosters collective creativity amongst participants of varying levels of expertise. We also believe it promotes an equal relationship between the end users and designers, inducing a shared sense of ownership for the artifact and sustainability of the artifact. These ideals were also pivotal in our choice, as we wanted to give the mothers the most freedom to express their thoughts and opinions. And we also used it to confirm our commitment to feminist HCI. As researchers, this meant having an empathetic relationship with our participants and sharing information about ourselves and reflecting on our actions and processes during each stage of the project. Just to give you some background, Milk Matters is a human milk bank situated in Cape Town, South Africa. It's run by 5 women whose primary activities include sourcing donor breast milk from about 20 women at a time, pasteurizing the milk for safe consumption, and distributing the milk to premature babies who weigh less than 1.5 kilograms in local neonatal intensive care units. Human breast milk has vital nutritional and immunological properties that cannot be replicated in infant formula. As such, the use of human breast milk in a baby's diet results in positive health outcomes, which is especially true for sick and fragile infants, such as those found in neonatal intensive care units. In addition, formula or other forms of food may result in health complications, especially for these underweight preemies whose digestive systems can't handle it and aren't developed enough to handle the formula. For these and many other reasons, breast milk is considered to be a vital medical resource as stipulated by the World Health Organization. Just to explain the process for a mother interested in becoming a donor, she will first undergo a rigorous screening process, which includes completing a health-related form and having to undergo an HIV and hepatitis B blood test, which has to be repeated every 6 months. She will then, once she's been approved to become a donor, she'll then go and collect sterilized bottles from one of the 24 depot locations situated in Cape Town. She will then take the bottles home and over time express her milk into them, store them in her freezer, and once she's collected a sizable quantity, drop them off at one of these depots where Milk Matters will then collect it from. As you can see, this is a demanding process that may deter many mothers from first becoming and then continuing to donate, especially considering these mothers have extreme constraints on their resources already. For this reason, mothers tend to stop donating after 4 or 5 months when they could continue for up to a year or more. So not only is the screening and collection process onerous, but Milk Matters is also unable to give them immediate feedback on receipt of their milk. And for this reason, mothers feel that their milk isn't as important as it really is. To overcome these issues, it's clear that they needed significant motivation to both start and continue donating their milk. So I'll be using a timeline to explain how we've gone through this research process. In the beginning, stage 1 and 2, we took a very rapid approach with short iterative cycles, and we did this so we could timelessly develop and deploy the application within a year. Thereafter, in stage 3, we took a more deliberative, explorative approach with a longer time frame, as we wanted to use this time to evaluate the application and get a deeper understanding for the donor mothers, not only as users of an application, but also as users of computer-supported devices and platforms. So the first thing we did was had an initial meeting with Milk Matters, the milk bank, and there we created a list of functional and non-functional requirements, the functional being that they wanted a depot locator, a donation recorder, an educational section, and a news and events feed. They also stress this need for sensitivity when it comes to mothers and breast milk expression, specifically that each mother produces milk at her own pace and should not be made to feel bad about this. Thereafter, we had a brainstorming and prototyping workshop with 2 of their donor mothers. This was quite challenging to set up over email, which is their preferred form of communication. And we only had 2 mothers who could attend that were both stay at home and could make the time and effort to actually come to the workshop. In the workshop, they confirmed that they donated for altruistic means and were also driven by testimonials and success stories of babies who'd received milk that Milk Matters was sharing on their Facebook page at the time. They also stressed this need for a depot locator, as having to only drop off their milk at an assigned depot by Milk Matters for them was a logistical issue. They, in terms of non-functional requirements, they said that the application had to be easy to use with one hand, as mothers tend to use their phones when they're nursing their baby or expressing their milk for entertainment purposes, so they only have like one hand available to use it. And they also stressed that it should have no audio-based functionality. This was in response to our suggestion that the educational section have videos and informational videos, and they said, nope, bad idea, we don't want any loud noises or flashing displays that'll wake our babies up while nursing them. Thereafter, we decided to use an online survey to reach the mothers who had shown interest in the workshop but were just unable to meet. And essentially what the survey told us was that the most popular feature that these mothers wanted was the donation tracking visualization feature, which I'll explain in further detail later. Thereafter, we had follow-up interviews with the 2 mothers from the initial workshop, and in this session we showed them a beta version of the application. They were satisfied with it, and their only suggestion was to add a suggestion button to the educational section. As they said, most mothers have their own ideas and parenting advice on how babies should be raised, and based on their experience, they want to share this with other mothers. Thereafter, we sent another survey online to get information, feedback on the beta version, and even though it had 21 installs at the time, we only received 1 response to that survey, unfortunately. Thereafter, we deployed the application in November 2016, and to date it has over 82 total installs. Just to explain some of the features, the first screen is the donation tracking visualization that I mentioned. So mothers can easily record the milliliters that they've donated and immediately see how many babies this is impacting and saving. The next feed is a news and events feed for Milk Matters to share any news and events they may be having. The screen, the second one closest to me is the education feed, and we split this into different topics. It's a number of health-related readable articles. And the last screen is this depot locator, so mothers can easily find the nearest depot wherever they are to donate their milk, and also find relevant information on it, like when is it open, when is it closing, who's the contact person. Not shown here is we also included like a really fun donor quiz, so potential mothers can use the applications to see if they would qualify to become a donor, just to get attraction. So thereafter, we began stage 3, which was a longer, more explorative process, and we used probes and participant observation to inform future design stages in this research. So we've used it to go forward with this research. Essentially, I began volunteering at Milk Matters on a weekly basis, and this provided me with the chance to have informal dialogue with the staff there. And my presence also served as a reminder for them to recruit participants for our probe study, which they're happy to do so because I was helping them out with office work and milk collections and deliveries. Based on our previous experience with organizing the workshops, we now used individual house visits to deploy the probes, and we found this quite successful as it allowed for a lot of flexibility, as many mothers asked for sessions to be moved because of bath time or sick baby or nap time. From the probes, the mothers emphasized again how anxious they are about breast milk, especially being a donor. I think this issue is a lot more prevalent. They also talked about hobbies that they have to keep them relaxed, but again, these hobbies shouldn't distract their babies, but rather keep them entertained and occupied while doing lengthy activities like breastfeeding and expressing. And lastly, there was this one probe activity, an archaeological dig, which mothers were asked to describe like artifacts and items found in relation to a mother, and all of them talked about one item being a cell phone with an extensive search history on health and baby-related topics, as well as numerous mommy support groups. Our findings, we've sort of grouped into two things. Firstly, looking at the mothers as the users of an application. As the users of an application, as a designer, you need to be aware of interrupted interactions. Moms tend to pick up and put their phones regularly, so you can't design anything that requires them to continuously be on the app. Again, designed for single-handed interaction. Nothing must be out of navigation reach because often they have their baby or something else in the other hand. Designed for, don't have any elements that might distract a baby, such as loud noises and flashing displays. And like I said, this was found from their response to the educational videos. Lastly, this idea of designing for empowerment through feedback and choice, and we saw this in numerous places in this research. One being that they wanted the suggestion button because mothers do like to feel like they can offer their own knowledge and share experiences with other mothers. This was also seen in their response to the depot locator. Mothers liked being able to know that they could go anywhere or to any depot and not rely on Milk Matters telling them which depot to go to. And lastly, it was also seen in the fact that the mothers could record their own donations and see for themselves straight away how many babies they were helping without relying on Milk Matters for this information. And the last idea is using applications to provide mothers with positive reinforcement when contributing. And being a donor, this is quite a big thing, just letting the mothers know that any donation is a good donation, and just giving them this positive reinforcement. Then the next aspect is looking at a mother as a research participant, and this we saw the same 5 elements. The interrupted interactions, all of our sessions were disrupted by a baby crying or a baby needing to be fed or something, and this isn't a bad thing. It's just a really good time to consolidate your notes and take a breather in the session and plan how you're going to move forward with it. Again, plan for single-handed interactions. Initially, we went in with all these like prototyping activities and wanted them to stick and paste and cut, and if she's got the baby in one hand, she just can't do that. Again, elements that might distract a baby. We went in with big probe things with pens and cookies and glue, and what did the baby do? Stick his hands in straight away and wanted to draw everywhere with permanent marker. So just be aware that when working with mothers and babies, you can't take the usual prototyping tools. Again, empowerment through feedback and choice. By using co-design, we saw that these mothers are really interesting and they do like to know that their thoughts and opinions are considered. And in working with them in this manner, I think we've provided them with empowerment in designing for themselves. And then lastly, this positive reinforcement when contributing. Most of the mothers had stories about their donation experience and their experience as a mother. So just as a research, this means listening to their stories, understanding it, and just, again, reminding them how great they are and what they're doing. So just to compare our three different approaches, we found that the workshops were really interesting as the mothers had really good feedback through shared experiences. However, it was difficult to organize for more than 2 mothers. And however, the participants that were there were very engaged. The surveys gave us very limited responses based on the types of questions we could ask. However, they were easy to complete and could be completed anytime by the mothers. However, like I said, they do need incentives and reminders, and even with those, you're not guaranteed responses, like we saw with our survey that only got 1 response, unfortunately. The probes were very creative responses, and we really enjoyed reading what the mothers gave us. However, they're probably not design specific, but better in informing how we can move forward with this research and for further dialogue. They do, however, require long deployment. We had month-long probes that not all of the participants were willing to do. And similarly, your activities in the probes had to be very thoughtfully planned so that the mothers would continue answering the probes and completing them. And that brings me to the end of my talk. Thank you so much for listening. I'd just like to thank all of my participants who gave up of their time and the Milk Matters for working with me. Cool. Thank you. Oh. You can use this one if you want.
Thank you very much for your talk. I wanted to invite questions. Please state your name and affiliation when you're asking a question so that the audience can know who you are.
Hi, my name is Estelle Smith from the University of Minnesota. Thank you for the awesome talk.
Thank you.
My question is about acceptability. So I know that there's already a lot of public debate right now about women breastfeeding their children in public.
Yes.
And I'm curious about how you feel like more technology that might draw even more attention to breastfeeding would interact with people's willingness to use a technology like this.
Do you mean it being a bad thing?
It could be prohibitive, but it could also be empowering.
Okay. I hope I've understood your question correctly. Thank you for the question. I feel like something like this, where we're working with the donor mothers and showing them the impact of their expression and their donation straight away, I think is a good thing for breastfeeding. I can understand how it can be. Are you talking about it being excluding those mothers who also use formula?
No, I think what I'm trying to say is that I guess it sounds like from your description that a lot of these women might be using the app like while they're also in the act of breastfeeding.
Yes.
And I don't know how often that would happen in a public setting.
Yes.
But I'm just curious about your opinions on how your research interacts with some of the public dialogue right now.
I mean, I think that hopefully it just, my research contributes to this awareness around breastfeeding and how good it is. I think there's still a lot of stigma, especially when it comes to breastfeeding in public. And even going through the probe studies and research that I've done beyond this paper, I've seen that there's still a lot of issues that these women experience with breastfeeding and breastfeeding in public. And also women who maybe aren't able to breastfeed because their milk hasn't come in or they're not producing enough milk to feed their baby. So I think what you're talking about, we maybe want to address more in the continuation of this work, because it's definitely still an issue. But I hope what we've done so far has just allowed mothers to feel good about their act of breastfeeding and donating their milk. So I hope I've answered your question. I'd be happy to chat more afterwards as well.
Okay. I'm Satoru Tokiso now from Japan. Thank you for your great sharing, so your great experience.
Thank you.
And so I have some very quick question. I'm really so interested in this application because in Japan it's really so rare to see such kind of experience or some milk bank. So could you please share your opinions about the biggest hurdle or the difficulty to spread such kind of application or some milk bank?
Sorry, can you repeat the last bit again?
What kind of difficulties or the hurdle to spread this application?
So do you mean like getting word out about the application and getting users? So we've actually had this issue because Milk Matters only has about 20 donors at a time, and it's such a short time in a mother's life where they are breastfeeding. It's quite hard to sort of evaluate the uptake of it because you need a long time, especially given that there are only 20 mothers at a time. So over a year, I mean, that's not a lot. So, and also even in that group of breastfeeding mothers, there's only a very small proportion that are donating their milk. So to get the word out, Milk Matters has been sending a link to the application to every new donor that signs up. We've also had, with the donation tracking visualization, a lot of mothers have now taken to Facebook and shared. They've said, hey guys, look, I've fed 13 babies with just X amount of mils. That's so little, you guys can do it. So I've had a lot of mothers use that feature and share it. And I suppose that's how we've sort of created awareness about it. Yeah. I hope I've answered your question.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Let's thank our
everyone.
speaker again.